I'm in my third year as head teacher at Jess. I came from abroad. I was new to Dubai, so third year in Dubai as well. I want to talk to you, along with my colleagues today, about culture change. Because over the last 2.5 years, we've been looking for a culture change within our staff room. This culture change is about looking after what I think is our most valuable resource. And that most valuable resource for us is easy. It's the staff. They are the key to everything. And what I'm looking for with my staff, they are the people I have to look after. They need to be happy and they need to be engaged. If I've got happy, engaged staff, then I'm halfway there to what I'm looking for. The question is, how do you achieve it? How do you achieve all of these teachers being in a good place, feeling good about their work, wanting to get up out of bed, come in the morning, and the work is not a chore. So they want to give it. I don't know about you, but teaching, for us, it's not a job, it's a passion. So it should come, I know it's hard work, but it should come easily because we want to do it. It shouldn't be something that you dread or don't look forward to. Now, I'll come back to our title here in a moment about developing core values, ensuring personal and professional growth. Personal and professional growth, that is obviously related to our staff. However, I'm just sorry about this. I hope I'm getting this right. Here we go. There's our mission statement. I kind of have not issues, but I struggle with mission statements because we put a lot of thought and a lot of time into them. And I think that we all actually want pretty much the same thing. And everybody rehashes it around a little bit. But if I look at our mission statement here, which is absolutely fine, that's what we look for. My key words up here are about creating a positive learning environment. That's what we want all the time, for our kids, for our teachers. And the other key thing here is on that second line where it says enables all within the Jess community to become successful. So it's all people. Often you look at a mission statement and it focuses on the students. Of course we focus on the students. That's our priority all of the time. But this says all within the Jess community, which is important because our strapline is about achieving excellence together. The staff, the students, and the parents working together. So we all need to be in a good place. We all need to be on the same page about what is happening, and we all need to feel good about what we're doing. And how do we achieve that? We go back to core values. And for me, we all have values. Core values. What are core values? Core, I find that a really good word. It's from the middle. It's from the inside. So for me, a good school comes from the inside out. It is not about marketing. It is not about fancy buildings. It is not about everything that looks glamorous. It's about what actually happens in the nitty-gritty and how people feel and what your students and your teachers and your parents are getting from it. And you ask, what are our core values? I hope I'm not going the right way there. They're nothing remarkable. Absolutely nothing remarkable. Those, let's face it, they're core values for life, aren't they? And they are core values for our students. That's what we promote with our students, respect for each other, supporting each other, us supporting the students, and trust between students and staff. We want to give them ownership to become more independent with what they do, and it's about their personal growth. That's our students. Does all of this apply to staff? Of course it does. All of it applies to staff. So those are our core values, and that's what we've been working on for the last 2.5 years to create a better environment. Now, I was very fortunate when I arrived 2.5 years ago because I walked into, not all heads are as lucky as I was, because you'll often walk in and you'll meet with a team and it doesn't always fit. And so you spend a year or two sorting things out, and people come and go, and things get rearranged. I didn't have that issue. Fortunately, I walked into a team of assistant heads that were completely behind me from day one, because they had the same core values and were looking for the same sorts of things. And two of our assistant heads, Julie Fantham and Carol Sankey, are going to join in this presentation as we go along. Julie is our assistant head with specific responsibility for pastoral care, and Carol with responsibility for some of the more prickly stuff: quality assurance, performance management, some of that stuff that is not so nice at times and quite difficult and hard work. So how are we going to turn all that into a positive? So the culture change I'm thinking about, or we've been working on, is turning negatives into a positive. So I walked into a great team, but what I did not walk into was a happy staff room. The great thing about these guys was that even before I arrived, they were happy to put their heads above the parapet and ask what people thought of them and what people thought of the organisation. And that's quite brave. And that immediately shows respect for the people that you work with, because you will ask them what they think. So I arrived and there was a cultural audit that had been completed. A cultural audit looking at how staff felt, how teachers felt about the school, about how things were managed, about how things were led, about how things happened. And what was absolutely clear, that we had a very, very talented staff, a very, very able staff, but that staff, those teachers, were not as motivated or as engaged as they could be. So we had a staff room that did not really reflect those core values. And there was a lot of angst. And people didn't feel comfortable. People didn't feel like they could take a risk. People didn't feel like they could express themselves because they felt under pressure in a negative way. I can remember saying to Julie and Carol shortly after I got there, because it took me a bit, I'd come from quite a nice environment, and it took me a bit by shock. And I can remember actually saying to them, how can you work in this environment? It's not healthy, it's not normal, and it's certainly not sustainable. And I didn't know how we're going to put this right, because there was obviously some work to be done. I had the people to do it, but how were we going to go about it? I didn't have the answer, but what I was quite determined about was that I wasn't going to get used to this environment. We were going to do something and try to get to a better place. What we're going to talk about today is I believe we're getting to that better place. It's a long journey. We're not there yet, but boy, we're making some inroads. But there's no quick fix. For something like this that is built from inside, comes from the core, you can't put a sticking plaster on it. You can't put a nice bowl of fruit on the staff room table and everybody's suddenly happy. You can't take them out for dinner. That only lasts a night and that wears off. So we had to work from the inside out and really look at our people and think about these things with our teachers. What did we have to do? We found that we needed to change our approach. So we needed to reculture because things weren't working. Our quality assurance was there and painstaking. The performance management was there, but really it was cosmetic. It wasn't even really happening. People didn't have time. There was too much pressure. Part of performance management is obviously sharing practice and observing each other. Now, our teachers felt that if they were being observed, something was wrong. They were in big trouble. And that, you couldn't get much more unhealthy than that feeling if someone walks into your room. And teaching, as we know, can be very isolating once you close your door. We want to open those doors and get people talking and take the threat away. And then people improve together. We had our professional development going on, but all of these things, plus the learning and teaching, the academic side, plus the pastoral care, everything's working in isolation. So almost a little bit working against each other and just making for mountains and mountains and mountains of work. And because of this feeling, this negativity, people felt deprofessionalized. which, let's face it, we're dealing with educated people. We're dealing with people who have ideas. We're dealing with people who we trust or should be able to trust. And we need to take that risk to trust people. Even if we're not quite sure, we need to give them the opportunity. But there wasn't enough trust. There wasn't enough ownership by people. So we needed to make a change. The first starting point for us was we thought we needed to talk more. We needed dialogue to open up. I'm talking senior team, middle managers, teachers, everybody. And there was this cultural audit done. And we had comments like this. It wasn't dialogue, it was checking. And it was very negative. It was checking because the feeling was that it wasn't good enough. Nothing was ever good enough. And it was a negative environment. They asked the question, did the senior leaders talk to staff enough about their teaching, about development, about what is going on? This says no. So that's quite a negative response. So we needed to do something about that. And we needed to increase that dialogue because you need to talk. We restructured. Now we went from this, you don't need to see all the detail, to this. So from quite a hierarchical model to something where there's more opportunities, more links going in, and more opportunities for people to work together, and more opportunities for people to take responsibility. Now, the culture change we were looking for, though, did not come down to a restructuring. It came down to a culture and by people connecting. So, we started to work out how we could empower staff, how we could give them ownership so they felt good about things, how they could see that we trusted them, how we could get that balance right. Because we went right to the core of our business and we looked at, it wasn't the fruit bowl in the staff room, it was some difficult things like the quality assurance, like the performance management, like breaking that taboo of going in to watch a lesson. I'm in trouble if someone goes in to watch a lesson. That's not what we want. We want lesson observations as a natural part of day-to-day life where people are going in and it's developmental. Because everybody, all of our teachers have something to offer. And one of the best ways it works is by peers talking to each other. It's not necessarily from us, it's from peers. So we needed to create a system. And we are going back to a system. And it sounds like now I'm talking about systems and management, and we're at a conference about well-being, and we are. But within this system, we were working to empower our staff so they feel good. They feel valued, they feel recognised, and they have opportunity. So we went right to one of the difficult areas, and we went to lesson observations, and we went to quality assurance. And I'll ask Carol if she can elaborate a little now on the sort of things we started doing.
How do we foster the trust, the respect, and develop supportiveness? And the bullet points talk about the main thing that overrides all of those bullet points is dialogue. We had to have a huge, major rethink in all our systems and make sure that staff felt trusted, felt as though they could have open and frank conversations. And it started with us changing our calendar and having another calendar amongst our academic calendar, which over...
Left.
Sorry, left. Sorry.
Left at the bottom, Carol.
That one?
Yeah.
To move forward. Okay, sorry. And again, as Shane said, you don't actually have to see the whole of this calendar, but it's an academic calendar that's running alongside our one where we've got our parents' evenings and our report writing and our sports days. And we called it an immersion calendar. And within that academic year, we ask staff to go in and do paired observations, to speak to other members of their department or outside other members of the department into other faculty areas, to go across to the different sites we've got on our Ranches site. We have our primary department, and say we've got an immersion week. Come over, come and sit in our lessons. And so it got to the stage where staff were really encouraged to invite people into their classrooms. The classroom doors were no longer shut for 55 minutes. They were encouraging, and they wanted to encourage staff to go in them. Alongside that is the QA, because that leads into actually having a write-up and a frank, honest feedback session after the observations have taken place. And then amongst that, alongside our academic calendar with the immersion calendar, we've got things like book sampling, moderation, inset sessions. Am I right just to go left?
Yeah, left. Yep.
And this is a slide where we've got our observation schedule and our observation form as it was in the past. Huge amount of tick boxes, quite a bit of writing, but most of it is sort of text that's been typed out. And that was how people used to see their honest and open feedback, which really wasn't. When it came to post-observations, that was what staff were seeing. And it set up this sense of negativity and isolation. They weren't able to discuss that with anybody else, such as their peers. It was like a line management structure which was top down, and we wanted it to be bottom up. So we took away that observation form and we broke it down into something like this. And that took a few months. We tried that out, and then we decided to strip away those tick boxes even more. And we were lucky that we ended up, some SLT members went on an inset session with Richard Churches, who's the leading advisor for CFDT. And he was doing workshops on lesson observation skills. And we broke down later to a line down the middle of a piece of paper. We've still got a few little boxes on the right-hand side. In fact, some of our new members of staff who've joined our school have turned around and said, well, do we really need those at all? Because what's important is what's being written here. And what's even more important is actually the feedback sessions which happen post-observation. So we've got at the top in our form, students learning, and we've got it on the right-hand side, teaching strategies. And what we don't have here, we've got it aligned, but hidden, is the word be, which means because. So we have, when we're doing observation, we look at the students are learning, or the students are actively engaged. Every student is actively engaged in the lesson because the teacher is engaging in certain strategies where every individual student's learning needs are met. And that goes up alongside the form. So we haven't got a completed one here for you, but you can see that that's how we've broken down. We've taken away the tick boxes, stripped away all those rather sort of negative and very sort of untrustworthy boxes to a more sort of able to actually write some information which we can give easy feedback and honest feedback back to the member of staff. Along with those peer observation and forms, we moved on from there and looked at snapshots, because often staff in previous observations were used to just having a line manager going into a classroom, and that might happen once, maybe happen twice over an academic year. And obviously that's not enough. So we wanted to encourage those doors to be open very easily. And so for that facility, we ended up producing snapshots, where we encourage staff to just go in and maybe spend 10 to 15 minutes. Maybe at the beginning, maybe in the middle, maybe at the start of a lesson. And then they could perhaps over a number of weeks actually complete quite a number of snapshots where they would go in and be able to give instant feedback straight away. Once they've actually completed that, they could then sit down and speak to that member of staff and have that dialogue. So what was most important amongst the slide that I was showing at the beginning is that there needs to be dialogue for there to be a move forward in any of these lesson observations. Otherwise, this is the isolation and there's the lack of trust. Got at the top there, curriculum, and we moved forward into actually taking that stage further, which I want to ask Julie to talk a little bit more about how we wanted to encompass the more wider aspects of our sort of snapshot review forms.
So, basically, we had come to understand that we were trying to drive up standards, the quality of our teaching and learning, the well-being of staff, and the staff being able to be praised in their role as teachers. But at Jess, we didn't just want to focus on having deep learning and outstanding teaching. We know that that is what we're all aiming for, but we would argue that you can't have deep learning and excellent teaching unless you've actually got strong relationships at the core of it. So the pastoral side of our school is very important in terms of developing strong relationships with the students, so that then the teachers in their subjects can have that sort of interaction that enables deep learning to take place. But then also we needed to underpin that with staff, and we needed to ensure that our relationships, staff member to staff member, improved as well, in order to have this greater sense of trust that we've been talking about. So there's more to a Just Teacher's role than simply being an outstanding subject teacher. We view that their pastoral responsibility in the school is equally important. And by pastoral role, it could be several roles. We do have a team of tutors who meet with their tutees every morning for 20 minutes in what we call mentoring time. It's a deliberate choice of name, mentoring time. It's not just registration, which would be formalities and certain procedures being done, like checking that they're present in school, following up absence and so on, getting any notes in from parents. But it's also a time when we would like our tutors or other members of staff to mentor students who need some advice and support in whatever area crops up for them. So we have a tutoring team, and during those 20 minutes we knew that some fantastic work was going on, but it wasn't recorded anywhere, it wasn't recognised anywhere. So we had a professional learning site that everybody could post observations on from lessons, from subject lessons, but nothing was happening from this 20-minute slot. And of course, it doesn't only include the 20-minute slot in the morning, but other times when a pastoral role is used in school, clubs, maybe trips out of school, visits, it might be extracurricular activities or sports. And these are things that make great teachers. You know, it's the extras that they add in as well. It's not just teaching their subject. So we wanted to have this as a starting point, and we are still on the journey with other things to do to recognise this contribution that all of our teachers make and are expected to make. So we focused, the main point of evidence, the real key evidence, is relationships. That's what we were looking at. And we wanted to be able to pop into any mentoring time in the morning, have a look at what was happening, and simply see what is the relationship like between the form tutor or the substitute form tutor, because we do have people as co-tutors who allow the form tutor to go off mentoring, for example. What was their relationship like with the students? Is it positive? We wanted to see about the students' levels of behaviour or attitude as well. Do they treat each other with respect? Do they treat the tutor with respect as well? Or even a cover tutor, when we have people in supply teachers from outside, for example. So that was very important. And we've kept it simple. It's either they do or they don't. It's just yes or no. It's very, very difficult to quantify something like that, an attitude or a value like that, or a way of behaving. But, you know, basically, would we accept that as acceptable levels of behaviour within society, within school, or the wider community? We don't just have active tutoring going on in the sense of PSHE work in tutor time. So we do, for example, cover issues such as social media dangers, all the sorts of things, health issues or social issues that you might expect to find in personal, social and health education. But we also have the nitty-gritty business going on as well, and we want to make sure those procedures are being followed within school. So we've got some fairly practical stuff there. The environment, what is the state of the room? We want our school to look good. We want the students to look after the facilities. We just literally do a check. Is it all tidy? Are things in their lockers? Are the tutors doing their jobs in chasing the students up on that? Are they maintaining their planners? Now, our students put all their homework in their planners, but it's not just for checking on a record are they doing their homework. It is a means of communication with our parents. And we have heads of year presentations, for example, where we ask our parents to check and sign their planner every week, and for them, if they wish to talk to us, to put a note in, so that we've got that two-way communication. So these are things that we consider to be essential to the smooth running of lessons as well. And then uniform. We were having a drive, we changed our uniform in September. It suited us at the moment. We may adapt that later because things are sort of going quite well. And we'll see when we actually review the form. So the focus has been on relationships, but we have looked at other things as well.
Left at the bottom.
Yes. Okay, so basically, it all came down to that bottom bullet point there, us trying to value all aspects of what our teachers do in all sorts of different situations, and to be models for the students, so that we could expect that kind of attitude and behaviour from them as well. If we come back to the notion that Carol had mentioned before about dialogue, one of the most powerful motivators for our staff and for students is talk. Conversations with their teachers, their tutors, and at the core of that, just like in lessons, is the strong relationship. So we wanted also to look at the relationships, or what relationships were like within the staff itself, as part of our reculturing. In particular, I worked on full staff inset over a couple of years. So in August 2012, for example, I did some interactive work with all the staff on identifying our own core values. And out of that, we pulled out the values that Mr. O'Brien had shown you earlier on, and they'll be there at the end, talking about respect, supportiveness, trust, all those things that we considered to be essential. And then in August 2013, so this is in the whole staff inset just before the academic year each year, I wanted to build on a couple of things, and that was removing any incivility or disrespect. Now they sound quite strong, don't they? But you know what it is like. Sometimes members of staff, there are tensions within any team. Sometimes people don't get on so well because of clashes of personality or whatever it is. And what you might call just mild aspects of disrespect to somebody else is more important. Maybe it affects them more depending on how sensitive they are and so on. So I'd had a look at some research that was done in the world of work with adults, and this came out of a sociological study by Fevre et al., who had looked at 4,000 workers in all sorts of workplaces, including schools. And I developed a list of types of disrespect or incivility, which might seem quite minor to some people, you know, like maybe excluding someone from a little clique in the staff room, to things that, you know, people are outright rude and, you know, implying you should leave the job and this kind of thing. So we did some work together within that, and it then brought in something that again came from Richard Church's. It's not the same inset that Karen is talking about, but I went on one that he had done on coaching and mentoring, where we were trying to, or he was trying to help people to reach their goals through being supported by other members of staff at school. And that was the GROW model that we have, which is quite popular in various forms, sometimes different acronyms. It's basically the same kind of thing. And you start off with having some sort of goal. So the member of staff might be asked, what do I want to change? how do I want to be in 6 months' time or whatever. But so just keeping it quite simple to one thing, what do I actually want to change and achieve? And then we would look at the reality, come up with some choices, and then up with a plan, which we called the way forward, rather than P for plan, because GROP doesn't look as good as GROW. And basically, it comes down to something like this. So on the left, you've got your goal, whatever that might be, whatever change you want to bring into effect. Over on the right-hand side, you've got reality. It's a little bit messy compared to your ultimate goal. And we worked on different sorts of reflection techniques, so that started to think about how things really were now, and really sort of dissect them quite a bit. And then come up with some options. Now, the options are not suggested by the person doing the coaching or mentoring. They're suggested by the coachee, the person being coached themselves, which gives them that ownership that we were talking about before, so that they are going to be able to suggest ways themselves that they can improve. It actually makes you feel good when you come up with it yourself. And you might think, well, how am I going to do that? Well, there were a whole load of tools that we were taught and that we're still using with staff in turn that work out to do that, like phoning a friend and getting advice from people you really admire. Could be real, could be fictional in history, or it could be somebody in your family you really respect, and what would they say, and so on. Whereas in actual fact, you are coming up as the coached person with those ideas. And then formulate a plan so that you can see where you're going to actually end up. So we used that in Whole Stuff Inset as a sort of warm-up activity as well before term began. And we have also got staff, and Mr. O'Brien will come back to a couple of our teachers shortly, who are doing coaching and mentoring with other members of staff as well. They'd also gone on this course at a different time, which has been optional, and that's been highly successful. And then we have brought it in because it has been so good, and this interaction in this building of more positive relationships, or just facilitating better dialogue with students. And we use it particularly within our tutor review days, which we have twice a year with every year group, where the pastoral tutor, form tutor, meets every child in their tutor group for 15 minutes and goes through what's going well and what they can do to improve. And I'm not talking just about how you're getting on in maths, you know, what's your level in math, where do you want to be, but talking about the generic skills that mean, you know, why are you doing quite well in several subjects and not so well in others, or looking at your behaviour, you know, why are you falling out with your friends and not being able to achieve what you want to do at lunchtime break or whatever socially. So basically, it's something that has helped to improve relationships within the staff, and we're hoping also will be something that's useful to help improve relationships with the students as well. And I think back to Karen.
Well, I think Shane and Julie have mentioned, you know, all these processes such as QA and PM, Inset, CPD, and it's not as though that as a school that we've not been having those in place, and they've been running for, those systems have been running for several years since the school was established. But they weren't really working well together, they weren't interlinked, and they were all sort of geared to accountability and not real improvement. So as part of our sort of professional learning site that we've adapted and developed over the last few years, we've actually changed our form that we use to get evidence and to make sure that that's uploaded, every staff member is uploaded onto our professional learning site under their particular portfolio. Because the previous experiences of target setting, again, were top-down. The inset had been decided by SLT, it didn't come from the staff themselves, and a lot of these sort of judgments on lesson observations, for example, which would then perhaps lead on to what specific staff needs were again very much a sort of a judgment on one particular day. It was very much unfocused, and the ideas really didn't question the purpose either, and they weren't grounded in sort of teachers' own context. So what that led to was basically a ceiling on growth, and Julie's just mentioned about growth. So we looked at just having one target, and that one target for every member of staff, whether you're an SLT, whether you're a subject leader, faculty head, or a teacher that was working within a department, had to just focus on one target, and that had to be focused on teaching and learning. And so the target is in sort of the main focus in the box on the sheet, and there had to be an evidence base. The conversations were needed to be had frequently, so that meant that there needs to be dialogue and conversations with line managers, with colleagues, about where they were going to get evidence from, how long it was going to take, what the duration was going to be. And what that did affect was collaboration. That's what we wanted. We wanted to grow that collaboration. So we've got like the process, well, who are you working with? We wanted to encourage people working in a group rather than you working in isolation, which previously, sort of the setting of targets and goals was very much sort of individuals rather than working in teams. So we actually encouraged people to work together. Then what evidence needs to be collated, and whether that also needed to be peer assessment, a 360 review, whether there might be some sort of hard statistics such as examination results. And then how and who would evaluate that evidence? How is that going to be collated? And that's presented a whole new change for us in creation of our sort of target setting and forms. SLT members now have under their umbrella a number of departments, so Julie and myself and other colleagues will have a number of department heads, and we meet, and we have on our sort of timetable, we have one session, we meet with them every week to make sure that we're continuing with that dialogue. So they feel as though that they are supported. So again, it's this fostering this trust and support from all members, as well as from their peers. We talk about target setting, we talk about inset, which obviously is ongoing, and maybe we need to refresh, and maybe it's a 2-year process that needs to be looked at and reflected upon again. And as we know, that school's a place where teachers don't just work, but they're learning all the time. So how does that impact on our core values? Well, the targets are now, they're perhaps more challenging. And whilst they're challenging, they're certainly far more meaningful. And as I said, they are focused on teaching and learning. Everyone is completely empowered and engaged, and the target setting has also shaped our school development plan as well. We can ask certain questions, and 12 to 18 months later we can keep going back and asking them again. We don't feel as though we want to be derailed or we want to be distracted by certain fads. We really want to make sure that staff remain totally engaged, totally motivated, and we can enable expertise to be identified. And Shane's going to talk a little bit more about how the staff are identified as being experts. And we can all benefit from this, unlike our sort of previous personal approaches to CBT. All our staff and our students are now, they're living and they're breathing it and they're benefiting from it. And without that motivation to learn, we certainly can't expect it in our students. So this is what we did. We did another audit. Again, we sort of put our heads up on the parapet and we just said, okay, let's see what they're saying now. And this is what we found. These are the comments that our staff are saying, our key resource are saying now. I'll just leave you to read that. And these positive comments, obviously, they validate what we're doing. We're starting to feel as though perhaps we are winning. And Shane spoke that it's quite a long process. It's no quick fix. If you read that, we feel as though that we are certainly winning now. The target is being kept high up the agenda, so therefore it's more likely to bring about real change, which is what we want. This is a nice one. It was nice to have responsibility. I felt valued. This is again part of our core values. We want to feel as though that every member of our staff is valued. And our immersion calendar and our immersion weeks, this is what staff are now saying. How often do people say, we never seem to be able to have time to get into other people's rooms? So we facilitate that now, we make it easier for them to do that. And these are the results now. The changes to target setting have made a meaningful difference to teaching and learning. Well, we're rather pleased now that we've got quite high statistics now in the agree and strongly agree. So it is making a difference. The graph is it's a huge indicator for us. And we're not afraid to ask for more validation because we feel that actually the work is paying off. So Shane, you're going to finish off.
I'll finish off, thank you.
Our other great staff that we have as well.
So, going back to staff well-being, we haven't mentioned work-life balance. We haven't mentioned people getting allowances for jobs, any of those things that traditionally might motivate somebody. We're talking about work, and we're talking about the crux of work, and we're talking about job satisfaction and engagement with your work, because that's what people want. They want to feel like they're doing something worthwhile and that they are valued and they are progressing. So we've gone right to the core of what we do every day. And we've stood up here. We're not talking about these nice things that might happen and extrinsic motivators. We're talking about performance management, quality assurance, all of these things. But it's about the approach. And it's about people feeling good. How do we know? We do feel we're making progress. We do feel a change in culture. How do I know? There's definitely a feel. Carol mentioned before all the decisions being top down. Things are now more bottom up. Our insets are led by staff, come from needs that staff tell us. We have people, for me, I mean, that last graph, if you compare it to the first graph, I know a slightly different question, but that graph, the nature of that has changed significantly. So people are getting on board, and people do need to buy in. How do I know that things are changing? Well, I've had a bit of a watershed, I've found this since September, and I didn't expect it. And that's one of the interesting things about when you work like this, and it's a long-term project, is you don't know what the end point is. You kind of know where you're going. You've got a sort of vision. But I don't know when we'll be finished with this. And in some ways, I don't quite know what's next, because we need to be malleable. We need to be changed. Look at the observation forms that Carol showed you. We've changed them 3 times in the last year, because of response from staff and us deciding, no, we need to focus more on the students and more on their learning. So it's change, change, change. And we will continue to change and adapt as we go. But are our staff feeling motivated? Those graphs say yes. Here's some of our people. Just a few examples. Jenny, you'll notice also all these pictures of people there smiling, so that's an indicator. Although I will admit that was taken on the first day of term, these pictures, so they've just come back for a nice long summer holiday, so they should be smiling. Jenny's our head of geography. Now, she's hugely enthusiastic, wants to take things on, wants to develop, will want to go on to some other job someday professionally that will take her to some bigger responsibility and something more creative. So Jenny's been mentored and nurtured along, and now is leading our curriculum development group for Key Stage 3 and 4. We've got nothing to do with it. None of our assistant heads have anything to do with it. She comes back and reports to us, sure, and comes in with her ideas, or the group's ideas of where we're going next or what we can work on and try. But she has ownership of that. No allowance, no money. She has ownership of that. And she loves it, and it's motivating for her. Gemma is a science teacher. And last year, start of last year, in my first year, I felt that the school was very horizontal. We had years 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and they didn't kind of mix. And I wanted more community. We looked at vertical tutoring. We looked at the house system. We have a house system. It wasn't working. It wasn't very effective. It was just there. And I dropped in a couple of ideas, and they weren't very good. And I said, please come with an idea, if you can think of something. And Gemma, I won't bore you with the detail, Gemma just come in with the most simple idea, the one that we all wish we had have thought of. And of course, that's it. That's magic. And she said, I'd like to do this and this and this. And I'm sitting there saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. That sounds great. And now, we have a thriving house system. She was in my office this morning. We've got a sports day next week. She's taken over. And I'm just sitting there nodding my head. And that is a fantastic place to be. Believe me, it is a wonderful place to be. And it's every time I see Gemma speaking in front of a big group, speaking to staff, speaking to kids, you can see her growing all the time in confidence and feeling better about what she's doing. And she'll do more and give more. Not because we're flogging her, because she wants to. And you talk about work-life balance, that's as much in here as anything, or as in measured in hours. And she will give it, but she will feel job satisfaction. These guys, they're fairly senior teachers. They know what they're doing. And I think Julie mentioned this earlier. Francoise and Geraldine, we've been doing a lot of work on coaching and mentoring, and they'd been on this course as well, and they loved it. And they came to me and said, we would like to do some co-coaching where we pair people off and people work together, and it's staff dealing with staff and peers with peers. Not a senior person dealing with a junior person, but someone who we think would match up and help them. And the next question was, do you mind if we do it without the senior leadership team being involved? You know, dread the thought. Yes, please, that would be fantastic. Go, do it. And we know it's happening, and we know people are getting things out of it, but I'm not keeping a tick box on it. I'm not marking it. And how wonderful that that's coming from within. Andrea Han is our head of year 9, and we have revised our behaviour policy in the last 12 months. We have 2 feeder schools, 2 primary schools. The assistant heads from the primary schools are in a working group with Andrea, not with one of our assistant heads, with Andrea, working on behaviour policy across the 3 schools. So she's leading a major development within 3 schools. No money, no allowance, she's doing it. And boy, is she feeling a sense of achievement. And that is wonderful. I know she's had, you were saying, Julie, she's had 3 meetings, 2 that were very, very difficult. And the last one came back just full of it and pumped up and really pleased with where she's getting. That's what job satisfaction's about, and giving people opportunities and letting them go. You go, Andrea, and you do it. You don't need us on your shoulder. We trust you. And that's the way to let people go. You don't put a ceiling on it. Head of year 7, normally Julie would be doing everything to do with transition from primary schools into year 7. To be fair, I think Richard nearly does everything now. And Richard annoys the heck out of Julie because he's always at her door saying, what about this? What about this? And we've got to slow him down. That's bliss when you've got people doing that. Extra. For no extra money, he wants to do it because he feels that we recognise it. And part of that recognition is sort of allowing him to do things and letting go. And people love that. These are clever people. These are people with a conscience. These are people that want to develop. I hear the word distributed leadership all the time, and you can go back and look at that structure, but it's not about a structure. It's about empowering people and letting them do things. Ian, when I arrived, was head of year 11. He now runs a 6th form, 200 kids. It's almost a separate school. It's not separate, but he almost runs a little school on his own. And him and I, our IB coordinator, meet with me weekly, and we knock things around. They report to me, let me know what's going on. And I'm sitting there going, thank you, that sounds great, that sounds great. Unless something's outrageously wrong, I have no cause for alarm. Any issues, major issues, of course I have to help with or rubber stamp. But they're running that mini school, they're running our sixth form. He loves it. He absolutely loves it. Because he's got so much responsibility. Sidra is one of our youngest members of staff. She's in her early 20s or something. She's been with us, this is her third year with us, and I think we were her first job, which is unusual. We don't usually take people on freshly qualified. And Sidra was a young lady who, an art teacher, who really struggled with confidence to begin with. But through our systems, through our dialogue, through our support, through us giving her some trust, she has grown and grown and grown. And she is not shy to come to my door and come in with an idea. And she's actually hooked up with the house system and doing lots of things at the moment with designs and flags and banners and all sorts of things to do with it. And she loves it. She's taking it on. And she's coming to the head's door and saying, I'd like to do this. Yes, please. So I'm getting in a wonderful place. I think my colleagues here would argue that if I didn't turn up, they wouldn't notice anyway, but the ideal would be if I didn't turn up and nobody noticed, because everybody's carrying on with these things and moving ahead, and it's lovely. So the more this happens, the more I think we are winning. Here's another comment from our survey lately, our feedback lately, from teachers. And I think also part of our school's only, the secondary school is only 9 years old. So it's been built to a very good level very, very quickly. And on a really, rightly so, very much focused on curriculum and academic, and we're trying to fatten it out and work on our August inset we're working on now is called Relationships for Learning, because we think relationships are so important and how we treat people is so important, and that we consider their core values. So we're not talking actually about anything too fluffy today, and it is congratulatory, because we value people and we recognise people and we give them opportunity. And I think we're getting there, I really do. But it's a slow process. Don't look, I think we're getting there. If there's any advice, don't look for the quick fix, because it won't happen overnight. And I went away at the end of June thinking, I really was struggling. I thought, I'm getting nowhere with this, because there's always a problem. This happens, or this happens, and you have a crisis, and you have to deal with it. And things are slightly wrong, so you're unpopular. You have to make a hard decision, and that's not nice. And that person don't like that. I'm not getting anywhere. But then it's happened, and the gates open, and things just start to flow. So it's about mindsets, and it's about these core values, and it's about dealing with people. And I know we've shown you forms today, we've shown you systems, but underlying all that, the real core of it is how you treat people and giving them opportunity, and those core values: trust, respect, support. Help me.
Fairness.
Pardon?
Fairness.
Fairness. We talk about, ownership. We talk about these things. Fairness is absolutely key, because these ones that we've talked about, the accountability, the performance management, the quality assurance, people don't mind being accountable. People don't mind being judged, as long as they know it's informed and as long as they know it's fair. They are fine. In fact, they will invite it because they want to show off. And I've been able to show off to you a few people, and I do think we're winning and on our journey. I hope there's something there you can take away about valuing your staff and thinking about the people. I know we've talked about systems, but it's not all about systems, it's about people. So I hope something there helps. I don't know if you've got any questions. If you have, I'll take any easy ones. The ladies will take any difficult ones. But otherwise, yeah. Thank you very much for your time. Okay, bye.